Hello everyone, and welcome to Literature's Next, the set of videos where I make an analysis of a literature masterpiece in roughly 15 or 20 minutes. Now this is episode 2 of Macbeth, so if you missed episode 1, I would suggest you to check it out in the description while I'm about to going on. So I have to finish the plot synopsis from Act 3, Scene 5 up to the end of it, and I'm going to discuss the two major themes of the play, which are ambition, fate and free will, and kingship and tyranny. So, are we ready? Shall we go? Now, to recap what was happening before, Macbeth is a valorous warrior and a lord of Scotland who is told the prophecy by 3 witches that says that he will be king. He then kills the king and also Banquo, his friend, who is also a threat to the throne. He then has the fright of his life by seeing Banquo's ghost at the royal banquet, and he decides to go to the witches again for some confirmation about his future. Now, let's resume the synopsis from Act 3, Scene 5. Scene 5 opens up to the Queen of the Witches, Hecate, who is furious with the 3 witches for having spoken Macbeth of the prophecy, although they speak more about the confusion of Macbeth. In Scene 6, we see another Thane of Scotland, Lennox, who is getting more and more suspicious about the murders that Macbeth has committed. And we also see Macduff, who is now disgraced because he didn't show up to the Macbeth banquet, which is the royal banquet. And therefore Macduff has gone to England looking for Malcolm and has called Macbeth a tyrant. Macbeth visits the witches and they show him 3 apparitions. First one, a fluctuating head saying, "Beware of Macduff." The second is a bloody child who states that none of woman-born man shall harm Macbeth. And the third apparition is a crowned child holding a tree saying, "Until Birnam Wood to the high dozen and hill shall come against him." Macbeth is now reassured, as there is no such thing as a man not born by a woman and forests don't walk, so he just has to take care of Macduff. Despite the warning that the witches gave him to ask no more, he asks about Banquo's heirs, as the prophecies say that they will rule Scotland. And the witches show him 8 future kings, all from Banquo's lineage. If you've seen episode 1, we now know why King James I of England is Banquo's descendant. Lennox arrives bringing news that Macduff has fled to England, and Macbeth decides in secret to kill all Macduff's family. The scene moves to Macduff's mansion, where Lady Macduff has received a message to flee to England. But since she has done no harm, she decided to stay, certain of the king's fairness. Macbeth is the king. Fairness. He's been called tyrant. In fact, murderers arrive to her castle and, not finding Macduff, they kill her and her son. The king's mercy, we say. In England, Macduff is praying Malcolm to return as Scotland is suffering under the power of Macbeth. And after testing Macduff's love for the country, Malcolm agrees to rise with all the Thane that had deserted Macbeth and fight him. Word of the death of his family reaches Macduff, and Malcolm encourages him to transform his grief into vengeance. This is again a hint of masculinity and violence. Act 5 opens up with a doctor and Lady Macduff's gentlewoman watching Lady Macbeth sleepwalking. As she walks, she keeps rubbing her hand and tries to wash a damp spot of blood that won't go away. She also mentions elements about the murders of King Duncan, Banquo, and Lady Macduff. The doctor speaks of her infected mind and asks the gentlewoman to keep an eye on her. Now, the Thane led by Malcolm, Seward, and Macduff are marching toward Birnam Woods. But Macbeth dismisses anyone who brings the news of an imminent attack. Meanwhile, the doctor tells Macbeth that he cannot help Lady Macbeth with her sleep problem. The Scottish lords and army gather at Birnam Woods and they decided to cut branches from the forest and use them as a camouflage. Macbeth receives the news that Lady Macbeth has died, probably of suicide, and that some guards have seen Birnam Wood moving. So he delivers one of the most important soliloquy about the sense of life, and then he resolves to die fighting. When Malcolm's army arrives at the door, young Seward challenges Macbeth, who fights him and kills him. Macduff enters and, confident that no man born of a woman can defeat him, Macbeth charges Macduff and they fight. Macbeth at this point reveals that he was born of a caesarean section, so technically he was not born from a woman, not in a natural way. And he kills Macbeth, fulfilling the prophecy. Macduff returns to Malcolm with Macbeth's head and hails Malcolm as the new king of Scotland. In the exact moment that the three witches deliver the prophecy, Macbeth and we as the audience are forced to wonder whether it is true or not just at the beginning of the play, but for the whole tragedy. The fact that a prophecy can be delivered states the existence of a sort of world with a future already laid down. If we live in a world with unavoidable future to come, such as fate, it would not matter free will for us and also for Macbeth. No matter for the action, fate will find its way. But Macbeth is set in a Christian world. Now, Norse, Romans and Greeks believed in fate that was even stronger than the gods' will. This is not the case. The problem with Macbeth is that he tries to master fate by killing Duncan, and therefore to hurry up the events. Unfortunately, the only consequence that comes to him is that he is now forced to continue to master fate. There will always be a threat to the throne. Banquo, Fleance, Macduff, and he just can't control them all. So in the end, the act of mastering fate is what will bring Macbeth to ruin. That's because fate tells us what will happen, but not how it will happen. That is exclusively up to us and our free will. In addition to being a reminder to not tempt the fate, the tragedy is also a monitor against unchecked ambition. Ambition itself is not disgraceful nor wrong, as every man in the play has ambition. The problem is when ambition is not restrained by moral. Banquo, Duncan and Macduff want to be great leaders, but they refuse to let their ambition to come before honor. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, on the contrary, allow their ambition to overwhelm them and become murderers, paranoid and maniac at the end. Macbeth, who allegedly before the tragedy was an impeccable man of honor, after the first murder descends in a kind of madness that will lead only to more and more bloodshed every time that he feels threatened. Lady Macbeth is absolutely incapable of standing the repercussion and guilt of their immoral act, especially all the following blood that her husband has shed after she has urged him to kill the king for the first time. She finally kills herself, not being able to live with her conscience. None of this would have happened if they have kept their ambition under control, and if they had taken the prophecy with a lucid mind, such as Banquo, who stated that prophecies are half-truths that exist only to drive people mad. While Duncan is always referred to as a king, Macduff calls Macbeth a tyrant in Act 4 while talking with Malcolm. In order to test Macduff's loyalty to Scotland, Malcolm pretends that he would be even a worse tyrant than Macbeth, and Macduff immediately recoils because that's not what he wants for Scotland. The characters in the play offer a clear idea of what a good sovereign must be. As Malcolm describes his characteristics, he speaks about justice, verity, temperance, stables, bounty, perseverance, mercy, and lowliness. Once Macbeth is declared king, he is moved only by his violent temperament and a personal thirst of power, which leads to a natural phenomenon like the horses eating each other and the weather that is absolutely unsuitable for crops. Macbeth is doing no good to the country. At the time the play was written, Elizabeth I had just died. She died in 1603, and England had lived what later was called by the expert the Golden Age. Elizabeth I and her father Henry VIII before her had traced a path that led England to the road of bounty and power. We must not be surprised that one of the themes of the play released after the Queen's death, such as Macbeth but also Hamlet, is the throne succession, and they all suggest a change of dynasty. The fear of instability was as strong as ever, so that Malcolm must overcome Macbeth as he is only a tyrant and for the good of the country, so that Scotland can have a good and just king once again. We also know that Banquo's descendant will rule Scotland. Again, King James I is Banquo's descendant. But once Malcolm is king, we have no doubt that he will choose Fleance, Banquo's son, for the benefit of Scotland, because thanks to the witch's prophecy, we know that 8 descendants of Banquo will be king. And we also know that if we don't try to master the fate, prophecy will become real. And thanks to Macbeth, we also know that a king can last in his position only if he earns it earnestly. All of this is, therefore, both a homage and a herald to the new King of England, hoping that he will bring wellness to the country and acknowledging that he will for sure bring wellness to England like his 2 predecessors. As for all Shakespeare's plays, there is so much to say, but unfortunately I had to cut it into 20 minutes video. Macbeth is one of the most famous tragedies of Shakespeare, and it triggers many internal questions to the audience. Are the prophecies true? Are we already assigned with our fate? Can we change or determine our fate? Should I do something or fear the possible guilt that I might suffer? Can we endure guilt? By showing us what is natural and what is completely unnatural, such as the witches, Shakespeare is giving us some lead, but as usual, we need to make our decision on our own. Lady Macbeth is the character that has fascinated the scholars the most, though I still think that it would be completely erroneous to call her a misogynistic character. Now, Shakespeare has always expressed how he considered women, especially when they are strong and resourceful, portraying one woman as cunning, as cruel as Lady Macbeth, and able to succumb ambitions is just revealing another possible and existing trait of women's personality. We are not all like Lady Macbeth, obviously, but some women are, and this is just Shakespeare acknowledging that women are single and different persons capable of different personality. If anything, Lady Macbeth is an additional demonstration of how Shakespeare could understand humanity. So thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that I kindled you again the interest in reading the play, or better the tragedy. Remember that I am Claudia, I'm the leader teacher of the school All You Can Learn Arese. We teach English, French, Spanish, German and Italian for foreigners. We teach adults and we teach teenagers. We also teach literature, obviously. This is our Facebook page. This is our Instagram page. This is our email address, and in the description you can also find the link of the school. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you soon with another literature snacks. Bye bye!